On Friday, Donald Trump posted, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings." Would an untalented man be able to compose the following satirical witticism? Go yourself.
He's going to be a factor for a while. It's so funny because, he was just this knucklehead. I knew him before he was, a president. He was just a guy who was chasing girls. Every time you went out, he'd come over and be like, "What's the name of that girl?" That's all he was. And the idea that there's this whole group of people that, that they think he's the champion of, which he certainly can't stand.
Trump strides into the cultural crossfire, believing his celebrity armor makes him untouchable. But Colbert and Clooney aren't firing blanks. They're locked, loaded, and grinning as they take him apart. The spectacle pairs a late-night comic's razor-edged tongue with Hollywood's smoothest smirk, peeling Trump down like an overripe banana left too long in the sun. Loud, collapsing, and stinking worse by the minute. This isn't a roast. It's demolition with flawless timing.
At this point, Trump isn't even trying to hide his awfulness. His critics accuse him of being a wannabe dictator, so what does he do? He sits down with Hungarian dictator and elephant seal barking for a trout, Viktor Orban. Orban went down to Mar-a-Lago on Friday for an official fake state visit with the
the authoritarian, the demagogue, it goes away when they go away, and he will go away. And and they don't have anybody that's as charismatic as him. He's charismatic. There's no taking that away from him. He's a television star. He is. He's charismatic. I mean, I don't agree with him at all on anything, but, he was famous for...
Stephen Colbert thrives on absurdity, and Trump supplies it by the truckload. Every tweet, rally, and rambling interview serving up an endless buffet of material. Colbert doesn't just point out the blunders. He magnifies them, stretching the ridiculous until it combusts under the spotlight. Trump aims for presidential but lands closer to a chaotic open mic act, spitting out half-finished slogans like punchlines no one gets. Colbert seizes on that weakness, exposing him not as a leader but as a perpetual pratfall. Funny only because he never realizes he's the joke.
I don't know what you all are talking about, but everybody I talk to is talking about what Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about. So let's talk about it. It being the conspiracy surrounding his old dancing buddy, Jeffrey Epstein. There you go.
Clooney dismantles Trump with a cooler kind of precision. While Colbert mocks the clownish persona, Clooney cuts straight to the insecurity beneath it. Trump's obsession with fame, ratings, and applause collapsing beside Clooney's effortless composure. Here's a man who never needs to boast about wealth or recognition, and that contrast alone becomes a roast. Clooney underscores Trump's desperate hunger for adoration, likening it to a toddler clutching a juice box, and against that calm confidence, Trump shrinks into a parody of ambition, sweating for validation that never really comes.
I didn't think people would vote for someone who was so deeply flawed. I know Donald Trump. That's the thing is people, I have his phone number in my phone book. He was the guy that came to the bars and asked me about which cocktail waitress was single. That's who he was.
This is back in the 90s.
Not that long, no, back in the 2000s, quite honestly. And so there's this part of you that just goes, well, that guy shouldn't be president. But I was wrong, and he was, and our democracy.
Colbert piles on by lampooning Trump's chaotic speaking style. The tangents that go nowhere, the grand claims that vanish into thin air, the sentences abandoned mid-thought. It's less a speech than a circus act without a script, and Colbert casts him as the world's worst improv comic, spewing nonsense while the crowd stares in disbelief. The brilliance of the roast lies in the detail, mimicking Trump's cadence, showing how every promise collapses halfway through, and mocking how a man so desperate to project strength ends up sounding trapped in his own maze of words.
For years, before he was, reelected, and recently, since they all got into office, a bunch of high-ranking people in Trump's administration have kept promising to release the files surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, his mysterious clients, and his suspicious death. But now, suddenly, for reasons that I legally cannot think of, Donald Trump seems desperate to stop us from knowing who Jeffrey Epstein's client.
Clooney sharpens the knife by targeting Trump's fixation on appearance. The hair, the tan, the endless claims of vitality, and turns it all into comedy gold. As someone who's aged with effortless grace, Clooney casts Trump's vanity as tragic theater, the orange tint a metaphor for desperation, the hair a crown of denial. In his framing, Trump isn't powerful but fragile, A man layering paint over cracks so thickly the wall itself begins to collapse beneath the disguise.
I'm just a big fan of yours, but he posted in July. Now, fake movie actor George Clooney is getting into the act. He's turned on Crooked Joe. What does Clooney know about anything? Should get out of politics and go back to television. Movies never really worked for him.
I will if he does.
He doesn't know that movies are fake, does he?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Colbert rips into Trump's business record, the bankruptcies, the failed casinos, the sham university, showing how every supposed triumph dissolves into lawsuits and broken promises. He skewers Trump as the only man capable of bankrupting a casino, a place literally built for the house to win, and milks every drop of irony from it, painting him as a monopoly man gone broke, a tycoon whose empire rests on press releases instead of profits. Clooney widens the lens, mocking Trump's obsession with Hollywood and his lifelong hunger for celebrity approval, pointing out the cruel twist that the very industry he chased now ridicules him without mercy. To Clooney, Trump isn't a star but a desperate extra who keeps wandering onto the set, begging for a line, only to become the blooper reel everyone laughs at.
And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, my mustache comes to you with a heavy heart because while I was on vacation, my Paramount paid Donald Trump a $16 million settlement over his 60 Minutes lawsuit. As someone who has always been a proud employee of this network, I am offended. And I don't know if anything will ever repair my trust in this company. But just taking a stab at it, I'd say $16 million would help.
Colbert leans into Trump's political career, roasting the chaos of his administration, the revolving door of staff, the endless scandals, the press conferences that unraveled faster than cheap yarn. He likens Trump's presidency to a reality show that should have been canceled after the pilot, but somehow limped through 4 turbulent seasons. A soap opera of government with Trump as the melodramatic lead who never knew his lines. Clooney, meanwhile, lands his blows by contrasting Trump with real statesmen, reducing his supposed triumphs to little more than photo ops. To Clooney, Trump's foreign policy looked less like strategy and more like a parody of a travel blog, where diplomacy meant collecting autographs instead of forging alliances. The roast hits hardest because it strips away every ounce of gravitas, leaving only a man hopelessly addicted to appearances.
Unlike your ability to sleep at night, the Epstein scandal will not go away. The president denied that Attorney General Pam Bondi informed him that his name was in the Epstein file. So naturally, last night, the Wall Street Journal reported that Attorney General Pam Bondi informed the president that his name was in the Epstein file. I, for one, was shocked. What are you going to tell me next? That the Pope...
Colbert turns to Trump's bottomless self-pity, skewering the way he casts himself as the perpetual victim of the media, the establishment, or anyone who dares to criticize him. He weaponizes the whining, painting Trump as the world's wealthiest martyr, mocking the absurdity of a billionaire president crying foul like a powerless underdog, his grievances spilling out like water from a broken faucet. To Colbert, Trump isn't a warrior against the system but a complainer-in-chief, drowning in his own tears. Clooney tightens the vice by targeting Trump's legacy. While Trump longs to be etched in stone as a historic figure, Clooney reduces him to a cautionary tale, a case study in how spectacle can corrode democracy. He twists the knife by contrasting Trump's desperate quest for immortality with the likelihood of being remembered as little more than the loudest embarrassment of the century. Together, Colbert and Clooney become a perfect tag team, Colbert dismantling the words, mannerisms, and absurdities, while Clooney punctures the ego, the vanity, and the hollow craving for status.
In fact, yesterday, he said he was surprised anyone even cares about the guy.
I don't understand it. Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life.
That sentence was never a big factor in terms of word. He went on.
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff.
Yes. No, he's right. The Epstein...
Trump isn't just roasted. He's dismantled, flaw by flaw, until only a silhouette of desperation remains. The brilliance lies in the balance. Colbert stings with satire, Clooney slices with elegance, and together they leave Trump collapsing under the weight of his own absurdity. What was once a man demanding loyalty, applause, and adoration is exposed as a parody of himself. They don't need to invent punchlines. They only magnify the reality he works so hard to hide, cementing the ultimate humiliation. Trump dreamed of being remembered as a titan, but their roast recasts him as comedy's favorite cautionary tale. Colbert zeroes in on one of his most laughable insecurities: crowd sizes, mocking the carnival barker bravado of a man who inflates attendance numbers that aerial photos instantly disprove. He likens the obsession to a teenager bragging about a party no one attended, ridiculing how every attempt to rewrite reality with sharp-level edits only makes the delusion funnier.
Make me earn it. So, we don't know if he was doing the creepy crime, but we do have a cover-up. And just like the cover-up on his face, it is patchy, and there's some really ugly under there. The incriminating details just keep coming out. For instance, this resurfaced 2010 Jeffrey Epstein deposition.
Have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18?
Okay, that's a slam dunk. Just say no. Okay, take it away, Jeffrey.
Though I'd like to answer that question, at least today.
Clooney adds another layer by ridiculing Trump's desperate quest to surround himself with celebrities who wanted nothing to do with him. His obsession with glitz becomes a running gag, as Clooney highlights the irony of a man who craved Oscars but wound up hosting WrestleMania. The punchline stings because it exposes Trump as the eternal outsider, longing for acceptance from Hollywood's elite, yet forever shunned, resented, and reduced to a gatecrasher no one invited. Colbert follows by hammering Trump's fragile relationship with facts, mocking the torrent of falsehoods, inventions, and shameless exaggerations he spewed as if reality were optional. He paints Trump as a hapless magician whose tricks always fail, the wires exposed, the rabbits refusing to cooperate, while the humor lands in the brazen confidence with which Trump delivered every lie, as though sheer volume could bend truth. Colbert thrives on that contradiction, showing how Trump turned dishonesty into a full-time act that fooled no one outside his most loyal crowd.
If you're asking if it's a harbinger, I think that, and I think you would agree, and I think we all sort of see it, I think that's sort of landed in a way. Trump is actually a result in many ways of the fact that much of the news programs didn't follow up and ask tough questions. That's the truth. It was, it's really easy because your numbers go up.
Clooney drives the point home by spotlighting the global mockery Trump attracted, world leaders laughing at him, sometimes openly, during speeches meant to command authority. He revels in the humiliation, contrasting Trump's desperate hunger for respect with the reality of becoming international politics' favorite punchline. Trump's global tours, Clooney suggests, resembled stand-up routines gone wrong. A man strutting the world stage, oblivious to the ridicule from allies and adversaries alike. He twists the knife by reminding everyone that the self-proclaimed dealmaker left nothing but frayed alliances and embarrassing headlines in his wake. Colbert follows by tearing into Trump's endless rallies, mocking how they devolved into ego therapy sessions, more spectacle than politics. He likens them to concerts where the band knows only one song, repeating it until even the fans look exhausted. Trump endlessly recycling his greatest hits, stumbling into self-parody as he tried to relive 2016. The monotony itself becomes the joke, exposing a man propped up by nostalgia instead of substance. Clooney sharpens the edge once more by mocking Trump's obsession with being a winner while collecting defeat after defeat, from failed court cases to midterm embarrassments, ridiculing him as a gambler who insists the House actually owes him money.
24-hour news doesn't mean you get more news, it just means you get the same news more. So the more and more and more you hear, these guys, their ratings go up because they can show up empty podiums saying Donald Trump is about to speak, as opposed to taking those 30 seconds and saying, well, let's talk about refugees, which is the biggest crisis that's going on in our country.
Colbert frames Trump as a man incapable of admitting reality even when it smacks him in the face, declaring himself undefeated while standing knee-deep in proof of failure. He turns the delusion into tragicomedy, a portrait of insecurity disguised as bravado, and circles back to Trump's fragile ego, roasting the way he lashes out at comedians, journalists, and late-night hosts as though punchlines were military attacks. In Colbert's telling, Trump isn't a titan but a heckler in the crowd, shouting at comics who only make the audience laugh harder. Clooney closes with surgical precision, dismantling Trump's fantasy of legacy. While Trump dreams of monuments, marble statues, and glowing chapters in history, Clooney sketches the harsher truth, a spectacle of incompetence wrapped in self-promotion, the political equivalent of a flop movie franchise, marketed with endless hype, dragged out with unwanted sequels, and forgotten as soon as the credits roll. He drives home the contrast, showing how Trump's desperate hunger for immortality collides with the inevitability of being remembered as a blooper reel of American politics. No statues, no reverence, just punchlines and the weight of laughter.